Hello, everyone. This is Olga Woltman and People of Substance by Lemon Skies. Today, I'm so excited to have my friend, my colleague, my collaborator, Kim McCormick on, and I'll let her introduce herself in just a minute. So, Kim McCormick is the head of McCormick Group, and they work with nonprofits at the highest level around organizational change or around organizational mergers. So, quite different from conversations we've had about communications and fundraising. But I'm so thrilled to have you on, Kim.
Thank you, Olga. I'm super excited to be here. We've been moving around trying to find a right day to make this happen. So I'm glad that we can squeeze it in, so to speak, on the summertime waves. That's awesome. So thank you so much. So yeah, I'm up here in Boston. So Olga and I, we get together when we come to DC or some other city where we happen to be in the same place. But I think the weather in Boston today is just about as hot as it is in DC. So we might as well be in the same area. And yes, I work with an organization called McCormick Group that my dad actually founded probably 40 years ago, I guess. And I've been working with him for about 10 years now. And we do help nonprofit organizations mostly with their structure. So their governance structure, their bylaws, how their strategy plays into their structure. And we've been doing that for nonprofit organizations all across the United States and beyond. So good stuff. I'm excited to chat with you today, Olga.
Yes. So you didn't start in the nonprofit sector.
I did not. So yeah, I actually went to Carnegie Mellon University. I'm supposed to be designing cars and toasters and things like that. So I have a degree in industrial design, a minor in industrial management. And for a variety of reasons, when I got out of school, I ended up falling into kind of this space in between architecture and marketing, and so I fell into that space, did a bunch of work with some really wonderful people in the architecture construction kind of place, and did that for quite a bit. And then I had some kids. And so a lot of things went on the back burner. In the meantime, my dad has been having this company since I was young. And after my kids were able to kind of function a little bit, he constantly said to me, "Come work for me." And I'm like, "Oh no, nonprofits are not sexy. I work in design. I want to, make the new Porsche vehicle. Like that's what I want to do when I go back to the world." But fast forward 5 years, and I was like, "Okay, Dad, I guess I'll go to a few meetings with you." So I did do that, and as it turns out, a lot of the skills that I had, a lot of the things that I had been practicing, really worked well with what my dad was doing. And quite honestly, I love the people, and so I stayed. And I'm really glad that I did. My only regret is I probably should have done it earlier. My family had asked me to do so a long time ago, and I was holding out for I don't know what, but I'm really happy that I did it. And it was a good transition into a little bit of a different piece, but not too dissimilar from what I ended up studying.
Yeah. So I don't know how much time your dad spends on social media, where we'll be streaming this, but what is it like to work with your father? And you're actually a second friend I have who's been in business with a parent. What are the dynamics like?
Wow. I don't know if he's going to see this or not, but I won't say anything that I wouldn't tell him to his face. First of all, just, for all seriousness, I'm really fortunate that I had the opportunity to work with my dad. He's brilliant. He is the most fastest strategic thinker I have ever worked with. And I'm a little picky myself. So he's just phenomenal. And I've learned a lot. He's also a great teacher. So he was able to take time and teach some things to me. But then he was a great listener too. So I have some skills that he didn't have. And so we actually were a really great team when we were working full time together. Now he pretty much is retired and doesn't want to ever wear a suit again. So I only bring him in when I call him, I need the silverback gorilla. So if I need the silverback gorilla, I bring him in. Otherwise, he would rather be playing golf. But what's interesting is that there's a family dynamic. So first of all, it's his company. So we had a little issue like, do I buy it from you? So there was that whole scene. And then in the beginning, it was like, do you pay me? Do I pay you? What kind of business do we set up from the standpoint of benefits and things like that? And I had very different ideas from my dad than that. I'm also a lot more organized than my dad. So in the beginning, I was like, are you going to pay me? Which is as awkward as my dad. You know what I mean? So that part was definitely tricky. And the other part that's tricky for me is that he and I work together. We have a handful of other people that sometimes work with us,
Mhm.
but particularly as he's been aging and kind of just wanting to go play golf all the time or be with his friends, whatever, I'm a chatter. And so my main key employee that I want to bounce all my ideas off of, my dad, is just like, oh yeah, okay, well, I'm out here doing something. I'll talk to you in an hour. And it messes with my flow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he's my dad. So it's tricky. Would I recommend it to anybody? Absolutely. I mean, all days are not easy. I called my sister sometimes in absolute tears, like, what am I doing? He's driving me crazy. But really the time that we had and the information kind of exchange that we had was really special. So, and still is.
So is it different, like our conversations and dynamics, do they change depending on if you're getting together for Thanksgiving versus if you're preparing for a meeting?
Mm. Uh, Sort of. We're both we like to chat, so we both will talk about the weather and whatever else is going on, my kids, blah blah blah. So that kind of falls into. I think the tricky part, like you're suggesting with holidays, is that Dad and I flow into a work conversation quick because he knows what I'm doing and I know what he's doing, and we know people that are the same. So I think from the standpoint that's okay with us, and then we can easily go back and talk about records or whatever, or golf. But my family, I think, sometimes is frustrated by that pace because they don't know the people and they don't know what we're working on. Particularly my mom and sister, I think, feel a little bit left out.
Yeah.
So my dad is like, yeah, whatever. But I feel that. So I try to find time for us to talk about work when we're just, sitting on the couch, not in front of everybody and around. But it has been a thing. So you nailed it. You're right. It's tricky.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I know, well, governance piece, certainly, but can you talk a little bit about nonprofit mergers and why do nonprofits merge? Is that a thing? What are some things that can go well, or where can things go off the rails?
Yeah, good question. So there's a lot of perception around nonprofit mergers. A lot of folks don't really understand, especially people on their boards are likely from the for-profit sector, and mergers and acquisitions in for-profit sector is very, very different from a merger in a nonprofit sector. Here's what I like to start with, which is, why wouldn't you take some time to figure out if what another organization is doing might help you as an organization do something better, faster, cheaper, leaner, meaner, et cetera? And I'm always shocked about the fear about having that conversation when there's literally nothing to lose. We sign a confidentiality agreement. Sometimes we don't. We get into a room and we talk about possibilities. I call it kind of blank slating, dreamscaping. Setting out a storyboard of possibilities. And you can walk away from all that and still work with that organization, still be, colleagues with that person. But I'm always amazed at how few people are really willing to do that when there's so much to gain, even if all you do is learn a little bit about that organization. But I think it's because of those perceptions, right? So you're an organization, you're struggling to survive like most nonprofits, you have very few resources like most nonprofits, and you're just thinking, I gotta hunker down and do all that I can, and one day change the light bulb and the next day ask for $1 million gift. And so I think that this is a very, very tricky spot for individuals to be in. And if there's anything that I could say to folks that are running nonprofits now, it would just be to keep the possibilities open, because there's really nothing wrong with a conversation. And when people say, well, how do I even start a partnership? If it's not like, I'm going to use your services, or we're going to, do a joint project, how do you even start that conversation? And it goes back to just saying, hey, what are you doing? What's going well for you? What's hard for your organization? And just kind of napkining those things down and saying, oh, I might have that, or we have that, or what if we did this together? Might it be better? And this conversation needs to take time. It is a process of building trust. It's a process of kind of coming to terms with your own abilities and resources and understanding what's available, and just being open to the possibilities. And this interesting thing is, I think if a lot of the folks running nonprofits were really, really young, like I see this with, I often do sessions with folks who are in graduate school, right? And so they're starting their own nonprofit, and they have all the dreams and whatnot. And they ask me, well, how do I find a partner? How do I do this? How do I, and they're just wild open to those ideas. Whereas those of us who've been in the industry for a while are a little bit more reserved. And so sitting down and just having that conversation, imagining you were still a 20-something and going to do your own thing, is really a good place to start. I kind of went all over with that, Olga.
No, I wrote down what you said, napkinning, because I think that should be a term.
Right? Yeah.
Last live stream I did we talked about CEO siesta, like midday naps for CEOs to kind of recharge and napkinning. So I feel like there's a whole glossary of terms that's going to be coming out of these series. So.
I love it. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you've been doing this for 10 years, for a decade. Your father's been at it for several more decades prior to that. What have you observed shift, change, evolve in how nonprofits think about their structure and kind of how they think about strategy?
Great question. So one of the things that Dan and I and my dad often talk about is that as we have observed, and even in my short 10-year time frame, and I think it's probably just this, what I'm going to share is probably just a reality of our culture right now. And that is that no one has patience anymore. We don't have patience to try to, wait and figure out if something's going to work. We don't sometimes even have patience to schedule that 1 hour what if call. We don't have patience for, okay, now I've decided that I want to go down and have a partnership with you. Let's build it right now. And as I said, these partnership opportunities are really built on trust. And trust takes time. And especially because now we're all moving in different directions and we're Zooming instead of having coffee in 3D. And interestingly enough, the things you talked about just a moment ago, the napkining and the other things, like part of that is like this textile feeling stuff that I think a lot of us are missing right now. Our computer keyboards and our phone screens aren't enough. And I see that playing out in the nonprofit world. So we're anxious. We want very, very quick results, and we've kind of lost that patience to build that human connection. And really, this is what allows that to be built on structure that's going to be really found and strong, because it's hard work. This is not easy. This is not like, oh, I think I'll partner with blah 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 organization, and in 6 months we're going to be rocking. Like, this is sweat equity. And in order to do that, you got to have a lot of trust and belief, and you got to agree to build something together, like the 20-something-year-olds who are doing it in their basement. You got to have that kind of passion. And I think our sped up world is losing the patience for that. And I don't know what that's going to mean exactly. What I see is organizations diving in and, zooming through it and trying to do all the things as fast as possible. And if we hit too many barriers, then it stops. And that's one thing that I have seen. And I like that people are willing to try it, and there's never an outcome that's supposed to be. I've worked with lots of organizations who start down the path and then say, yeah, this isn't quite right. And that's okay. I just want folks to be able to give it enough time to be able to genuinely and authentically say it's okay to stop.
Well, and I think that in person, there's certain chemistry that's really hard to build over the screen. And it is about who we trust, right? Exactly. So in person, you're able to build that rapport much quicker.
Exactly. Just like Olga, when you and I met, I didn't know you. I think that we met in person, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And so we can have this conversation over the internet, but when you and I first met, we, it was, I don't know, people were getting their lunch or breakfast, whatever. And you and I were just standing there. And so we exchanged immediate things that we probably wouldn't do on screen.
I'm losing you, Kim.
So that even if I don't love everything you say, you don't love everything I say, at the end of the day, we kind of just good.
You're cutting in and out a little bit. I'm not sure why, what's happening here, but we'll keep carrying on, and hopefully your screen will come back in just a minute here. Kim, we there?
Yep, I'm there. Hi.
Perfect. Yeah, video is not my strong suit. I totally agree. And, I think, I probably would I'm a sharer, so I probably would share it over the screen too. But I definitely am shorter in person than I am on screen. So.
Me too. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you. A lot of what you and I talk about is the people factor, right? And emotions and feelings and, kind of response to change. Because I think at the end of the day, like objectively, you can kind of look at something and analytically think one way or another is the right way to go. But there's all these squishy feelings and emotions that play a role. So can you talk a little bit about emotional intelligence and guiding organizations through change?
Yeah. Ooh, this is so tough, right? It makes me think that psychology should be a required multiple year study in high school and then also in college, because and I wish I had more psychology. I had some in college and none in high school, but just kind of building up that muscle memory for how to kind of manage through that. So I get my extra training from reading books or listening to podcasts or watching TED Talks, which I know is not as good as a degree. So I'm not professing to be that. But this is a personal people business. And so one thing that I have learned is that listening is really important. And that sounds very cliche, but it is hard to really take what you hear and take it at face value, because we all have biases and prejudice and whatnot. And so I think that figuring out how to hear what is being said or shared, or that you read, and reading in between the lines, reading the context. One of my very, very favorite quotes is by George Bernard Shaw, which is the biggest problem of communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And that is, and you and I talk about this a lot, right? This is very, very tricky to do. And so what I find is that you can fall back onto a couple of different aspects that help people through this. One is being repetitive, which seems ridiculous. And particularly for people whose brains like to live in the future, being repetitive is very, very difficult. It's exhausting. You feel like you're being, not your most intelligent self. You feel like you're going backwards when you want to go forwards. But it's the repetition that allows people to kind of internalize what you're really saying. So to the same person, maybe not the exact same way. It's not like you're going to say the sky is blue, the sky is blue, the sky is blue, but you're going to keep saying things about the sky being blue so that the person really understands I'm just talking about the color of the sky. Yeah. Nothing more, nothing less. Because people trying to read in so much to every single word. And I think this is trickier even as we progress, to again point the reality of our current culture is that people have the patience of a gnat when they're reading. You and I talk about this, like what are the first three sentences, and that's all, and you better say it then because that's all they're going to get. But it's not even just the first three sentences, it's the words in the first three sentences. And what the communicator might be wishing to say, I want to partner with you, let's build X. The reader reads, you want to take what away from me? What are you gonna crush? And that wasn't the intention at all. But because the perception is, whoa, what are you talking about? This wasn't even on my radar. There has to be this kind of moment of understanding. And that goes back to that patience, right? So I think that even in written communication or verbal communication, we don't have the patience to kind of go back and tell the whole story, like way back to once upon a time. We want to get to the plot shift, and all the way to the climax and the change much more quickly than, quite honestly, most people, particularly if they're not already in sync with you, are ready to read.
Yeah, and to counter your quote with a quote, what's that thing they say? People may not remember what you said or did, but they remember how they felt.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And we can't control feelings. Nobody can. So, that's why you gotta listen. Yeah.
Right. You actually co-wrote a book about nonprofit mergers. I didn't know that about you, but as I started digging, I discovered that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Did you and your dad co-write that?
We did, yeah. So my dad wrote the book a long time ago, and I remember when he wrote it. I was not working with him, but I was focusing more on what he was doing for a living, et cetera. So he wrote the book. So then when I started to work with him, we had a couple of clients, but I wasn't full-time, busy with clients. And so I was like, and my dad was like, go read the book, which I never had done. So I open up the book and I read it and I'm like, whoa, this is outdated. and you and I know, me and my dad, that this is not how this should be written anymore. And it was also based on one case study, and I wanted to kind of expound on that a little bit. So I said, hey, Dad, I'm either going to write a new book, or I think we should update this one. And so kind of just also to give him a nod, we agreed to update his version. And so he really didn't have a whole lot to do with it, other than, all the coaching that was taking place between he and I at that time. But I tried to modernize it. And quite honestly, I haven't read it in a while. I should probably go back and modernize it again, because so many things change. But what I love about the way that, and my dad's a fabulous writer, and he's an amazing storyteller. And what I love about the way that the book reads is that it is still relevant. And oddly, clients call us all the time and go, oh, I saw your book, and we joke about it being the best thing besides Ambien to get you to sleep. Because it's pretty boring. I mean, the third chapter or whatever is about bylaws, so very few people like to read about that stuff. But it talks about some of the core things that are important to how at least we run our business. One is that the people who are currently in charge of the business, they're the ones who need to be starting this conversation. Because if they aren't interested in partnering or talking about any sort of formal collaboration, it's never going anywhere. It's just purely not. Because they're the ones who set the tempo. They're the ones who organize the time and version out the resources. And it takes time and it takes resources to get this to even start. So that's one thing. The other thing is about that coming around the table piece and really listening. What do you have? What's going well for you? What are you trying to build? Mm-hmm. And that still is very, very relevant now. And our chapters talk a lot about that part too. There's plenty in there that's technical about, okay, how do you get this done? And we aren't lawyers. A lot of people think we are. We aren't. I work with lawyers all day long, every day. And lawyers play a very particular piece in this. But to your point about human interactions, for nonprofits, I've seen people do this, but this is not how you should do it. You don't write a letter to your friend who's running a nonprofit over around the corner and just say, hey, I want to merge. Here are my terms. I'll see you next week. That's a bad approach. So it is a human thing. So it's not just about the contract. And this book gives a nod to a lot of the human aspects of that.
That makes sense. How do people?
Mm-hmm.
So since it's Friday, Kim,
yes,
I'm ready to do some fun things.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So I want to ask you about, again, one of the things I didn't know about you, and I've known you for a couple of years now. You were a fitness instructor, and I need to know more.
I was. So I first started teaching the fitness when I was in college. I decided that it would be a good way to make some cash. Mm-hmm. So the football team needed a trainer. And although I am 5 foot on a good day, I'm loud and I'm focused on fitness. And so I started training the Carnegie Mellon Tartan football team. Don't joke, they lose everything. Although apparently this year they're doing really well, but they are a terrible Division III team when I was there. And I loved it. I loved the camaraderie. I love just working out with people. I like seeing people get excited about doing 10 push-ups, in 5 minutes or less. So anyways, I used it as a moneymaker. And then out of school, I found, oh my gosh, I can work at this, Zhuzh club, getting paid for it and not have to pay. And I can do all that. And so I used that as a way to continue my love for fitness. And then when my career started taking off and what a number of things related to that, I just stayed focused on it because I just love it. I just love the people. When I was having kids, I actually ran a fitness department. And again, that's just a kind of a people thing. So the last part of my career, I wanted to work for the gold standard in fitness clubs, which is the Equinox Club. Mm-hmm. And so when I was living in Virginia at the time, I went to work for them and it was fantastic. I'm still great friends with them. I love everything about that culture. But when COVID hit, I just had to do kind of an internal perspective of my life. So I live in a town just outside of Boston. It was taking me 20, 30 minutes to get to my classes. And for those of you who do this, as an instructor, I spent hours planning the music, the workout, the blah, blah, blah. So it really just didn't make sense as my career with nonprofits was taking off. But I still really miss it. And I love it. And I love that I have that knowledge and I've been able to pass it on to other people and my kids. So yeah.
Was it the Tyson's one?
I did. I taught at Tyson's. I taught at Bethesda. Yeah.
Down the street from me. I've never been to that one, but down the street.
It's nice.
Now we do Peloton.
I know. Now we do Peloton, exactly, in our basements, which is fine.
That's exactly what I did this morning.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up with a game, a round of two truths and a lie. So we're keeping it. I warn everybody who's done it. We're gonna keep it like PG, since it's, that game can go off the rails very. So we'll keep it PG-ish, somewhere in maybe PG-13. Two truths and a lie. Okay. So you tell me.
I will do mine, but I would love to have you share yours too.
Okay.
Have you done it?
I've done it many times.
Okay.
Let me think about it.
Okay. Think about that. All right. Two truths and a lie. So whatever order I want. Let's see. So I once was on an airplane that I thought was going to Boston, and it went to New Orleans instead. Second thing is 5 times in my career, I have gone commando because I couldn't find my undergarments while I was traveling. And I had these all pointed out. What was my other one? I have shook hands with Ryan Reynolds.
I am going to say that the airplane to New Orleans instead of Boston is the lie.
Oh no! I know. You know what? I was very early in my career, pre-kids, pre-wedding, whatever, and I was in DC, and it was way before 9/11, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was in that area where there's a bunch of like hopper flights that go to areas right around DC and New York, Boston, etc. I literally walked right onto a flight, was sitting down, we were flying, and I saw that the sun was on my right-hand side instead of my left. It was evening. And I'm just like, man, gosh, we're going farther south. I thought we would turn around. All of a sudden, we are not turning around. I do the dinger for the assistant to come by, and I'm just like, are we going to Boston today? She's like, no, we're going to New Orleans. I'm like, oh my God. I freaked out. I couldn't even relax. It was a jazz festival. I was a total disaster. It was so bad, but it was crazy. So no.
Did you have a great time though?
I don't think I could relax enough. I mean, I should have taken 3 days at the jazz festival, but no, I was just so embarrassed that I had done it, that they let me do it, that I wasn't going back. It was a work trip. I was like, oh my gosh, it was terrible. So no.
So I think I'm okay. So it's between Ryan Reynolds and Commando on the work trips. I'm going to say that Commando is the truth and Ryan Reynolds is a lie.
Oh, again, you're off. No, I know. No, it's the Commando. Although I said 5 times, I have actually forgotten my undergarments once, but not 5. So no, my sister's a film producer. You and I talk about this, and her and her husband actually produced Deadpool 2. And so I was on site when they were filming, and I have hugged Ryan Reynolds. He's a fabulous, lovely, wonderful man. Very, very tall, but yeah, it was good. That's my thing. Look at you. I stumped you.
I like it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want me to go now?
I do.
Okay. All right. So these are in no particular order. I once was an extra in the production of a horror movie where my job was to lay and look bloody. Let's see. I have almost missed my flight because I was singing karaoke in a Paris bar and realized that it was time to go catch the plane and almost missed that. And I used to compete in piano recitals.
Oh, Olga, what didn't you do? I think it's the karaoke.
Nope, that one is factual.
Oh, okay, then piano recitals?
Yeah, complete BS.
I was like, I don't think she plays piano.
No, I can't play. I have no musical talent. I took 1 year of piano lessons when I was like 7 or 8 and absolutely despised it. So
that's funny. Yeah, but I can totally see you lying bloody in the horror show. I didn't know that about you.
So this was actually in high school. This was like a random group of people. This wasn't a real movie production. This was somebody in the early days of cameras thinking, I'm going to make a movie and it's going to be like a horror flick. So it was kind of random, high school kind of thing, but
That's fun.
yeah.
Good for you. That's cool. That's so funny. Thank you for doing that for me.
Well, thank you for joining, Kim. This was fun. I'm going to start preparing. I'm going to have a jar of truth and lies to pull from. Maybe I'll
Yeah, I had to work on that. Thank you for giving me that heads up. So
I'm gonna create a jar and I'm gonna pull a slip of paper for our next one. So
okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me, Kim.
Yep. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.